Alright, this is a video, obviously. In this video, I'm going to try to show, demonstrate, and prove what an appropriate technique would be to compute the present value of cash flows in the face of a WACC that changes over time. I hope that the volume is set and the mute is off. And of course, if you would like to find this video, you go to edbodner.com and you will look in the proofs of different concepts in the ECF model. Okay, and this is if you really get excited about irrelevant kind of things like really accurately making a model when the WACC changes. Now, let's first put in what we're going to do. Again, the older I get and the more I do this, the more I believe how essential it is to make a theoretical value in a corporate model. Remember, a corporate model is a fictional model of some entity that never, ever dies. That is the big problem, and that's the problem with the terminal value. Now we're going to try to make this, we're going to adjust this WACC, and we're going to put also a half-year assumption into this as well. So that's going to be the painful one. Now let's make our WACC. I have the caps lock on, so let's just make a lookup, please, not a VLOOKUP, just a regular old lookup. We're going to look up on the year, and then we'll shift control down and put the year in, shift control down, the WACC. Now I happen to, I don't, oops, I think I have this add-in that I hopefully taught you about in another one. Oh, great. Oh, that's so much for that one. Okay. I didn't even swear that time either. Okay. Now, once we have the WACC here, if we would, the WACC changes over time. And remember, our terminal period is right here. Let's to make the terminal period, why don't we do this? If you click on the entire sheet and go to the Home tab and go to Conditional Formatting and make a new rule, and on that new rule, if you would say, well, let's take the terminal period down here. This is, I'm going to put this one, I'm going to make this the row will keep it all. If that's true, okay, is that alright? I think I have that. If that's true, then let's just format it with something. How about we fill it with yellow or something? Okay, we can do that. That just will keep track of what our terminal year is. Furious. A little shortcut key didn't work, but there we have the terminal period, and the WACC is different in the terminal period than all the other periods. If you don't like, by the way, the conditional formatting to go up here, you can just go to your conditional formatting and manage rules and just delete it from these ones. Okay, sure. Oops. Oh, I said that and I was wrong. Okay, and so now let's compute our cash flow. And this time, the last time we had a different starting year, but this time we're just going to make our cash flow as our starting cash flow of 100. Now, if you got really technical, you'd say, well, this growth rate for the cash flow is not the same over the course of the year, and when we grow it, we should grow it from some sort of half year, but this would be a reasonable kind of assumption. Now, of course, this if we're going to value it as of the beginning of 2014, if we're just going to use a regular old end of the year NPV formula, we're going to make an error now. Let's do a couple of things wrong. Let's put incorrect PV factor. Okay, so if we took 1 divided by 1 plus the WACC and raise that to the year counter, just control 1, then here's the problem with that. There is no memory of this. Once you get to this value, it gives you actually, this cash flow is about the same value as this cash flow. Indeed, if we would have made the first period, let's make it 25%, we actually would have this cash flow higher than this cash flow. Now, if there was inflation, of course, the inflation has already reduced the value of this cash flow. If there was risk in these cash flows, you have to make it through these risky cash flows in order to get those. So we can, instead of computing that, we can put a compound, I call it compound PV factor. Now, for this one, we'll just start with 1. It's kind of like we're making an inflation calculation. 1 plus this times 1 plus the WACC. I'm sure for some of you young people have a much better education than me that there's a fancy name for this. Okay, now once we compute that, then we can put the PV of cash. Oops. Oh no, it's French again. Cash flow with varying WACC. Okay, and to get that, should I put it, maybe, why don't we put it in this column? Okay, and we just put a sum product. Now, there's a little trick with the sum product. If you take all the cash flows and then put a divide sign, Excel doesn't tell you that you can put a divide sign there, then you can get, this is the theoretical value. Now, here's the problem. That doesn't have a half-year convention in it, because this 120, we'll assume this occurs in the middle of the year. Now, if you got really, really fancy, you said it's not really in the middle of the year because there's some compounding of the growth on a day-by-day basis, blah, 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 blah. We're going to, at least for now, just assume it occurs right in the middle of the year. Now, what we could do, then we can have a PV factor for the middle of the year. This might be the most complicated part of this whole thing. Now, here's what you could do. You could multiply it by 1 plus the WACC divided by 2 plus the WACC of last year divided by 2. You get 1.125. Now, that's not exactly correct because there's some compounding of the discount rate itself. It's almost like this other problem, and if we're going to demonstrate the really correct value, we're going to split this WACC, and I'm going to have 1/2. It looks like somehow 1/2 year WACC again, and this one we take 1 plus the WACC and we raise that to the 0.5 power minus 1, okay? That's not obviously exactly 25 divided by 2, which I believe would be 12.5. So here's what we do is we take this one and multiply it by 1 plus the WACC from the prior year plus the WACC from this year, okay? And then we get a little bit of adjusted WACC, and then finally we get the true value of the cash flows. and that's simply the sum product of all of the cash flows divided by our new discount factor with the 1/2 year. And that's the value we're aiming for. So let's put that in our theoretically correct valuation. Now we're going to try to replicate this value. That's the idea of all of these. Value with terminal value. Okay, and so let's first compute our explicit value. As usual, we simply could put the cash flows we have, and this time I'll multiply them by the explicit period switch. Remember in the last time, suppose it would be a little safer to, oops, I did it wrong. If it's the if it's true, oops, I did it wrong. If it's true, then we take the cash flows. Okay, so it's not really much longer. But remember, if we were making a, whoops, I might have gone off the sheet, so let me show you that. That's the formula. If it's true, then take the value. And you like true falses, remember, because it's ignored in the NPV calculation, which doesn't matter in this one. Sum product of all of the cash flows, and then we divide it by our middle year discount factor. Okay, so that's the easy part. And then now let's compute the terminal value. And let's see, the whole exercise really is geared to demonstrating how this should work. So first thing we can do is take these cash flows that we have for the terminal year, multiply them by 1 plus the terminal growth rate divided by the WACC. And this time let's take the WACC, the periodic annual WACC, minus that growth rate. Okay, and let's multiply this whole thing by the terminal switch. Okay, now that's not quite correct, because remember, this value is an annual value, and from our last exercise we know that if we want to adjust this to the true value at the beginning of the year from the annual cash flows, we would have to take 1 plus the WACC and raise that to the power of the mid-year. Okay, so we get a little bit higher of a value, and then for our terminal value calculation, this time take the sum product of all of the cash flows, the terminal cash flows, and divide it not by the oh look, I spelled it wrong, not by the half year, but by the full year. Okay, I'm back. I can't remember where I left off, but I'm making a little bit of a higher WACC. What happened is I had too low a WACC, and then I have a problem with a really, really long-term analysis occasionally. The WACC is less than the growth rate and all that stuff. So let's redo the terminal value one more time. It's the cash flow times 1 plus the growth rate, old integral divided, the growth rate divided by the WACC minus the growth rate. Okay, and this time we multiply it by the terminal switch, and then we make another adjustment and we put 1 plus the WACC raised to the half year power. Okay, so unfortunately that's a horrible calculation, but that gives us our WACC. Now we remember when we have this sum product, we take the sum product, and this time we divide it not by the because we're getting this cash flow, we've already made the half-year adjustment, so we do it by the simple full-year discounting without the half-year. Sum these, and we get our enterprise value, and you see that you get the correct valuation. So if we this time let's put our PB with our varying lag. This is without it, and then corrected case with I'm going to rename this with TV That's we kind of took we got the correct enterprise value, and then we take it, and then the percent difference is just this divided by that minus 1. We get 6% difference. Our absolute difference is this minus this. You know, and this time it's not what happens if we put a 15% WACC in here. We got a little bit, maybe it's about half the year of the WACC, 8% WACC. Or still, if I put a 5% WACC, then we get a little bit of a tiny difference, so that's what I was worried about here. It's kind of up to 6%, it's extremely small, and 7%, you can't even see it. So that's our analysis of change in WACC. This is the problem, the terminal value calculation. We have to adjust it to get it to the middle of the year, and then to get a middle of the year valuation thing, and then take it to the beginning of the year. Okay, I'm amending the last part of this video. You know, I made it too complicated, and I shouldn't have. If we just take the cash flow and multiply that by 1 plus the growth rate, the long-term growth rate, and then we divide that by the WACC minus the growth rate. Okay, no half-year assumptions and all that right now. Take our terminal period, multiply it by our terminal period. We get a little bit of a different number here. Okay, vaguely remember what we had before. Now, if we did do this, the sum product of this, take all of the cash flows and divide that by our middle year PV factor, then we're back to the same answer. At least put a little bit higher discount rate, and then we're exactly at the same answer. So here's the let's write down the lessons again. One, we need to compute the we need to compute a 1/2 year discount factor with compounding. That was and this is how we do this. We put the discount rate, so we'll take it's the 1/2 year equals 1 plus the WACC raised to the 0.5 5 power, and then the compounding factor equals 1 plus the half year times 1 plus 1/2 year in t minus 1 times last index. That's a pain, isn't it? But it looks worse than it really is, I hope. And then what we need to do is the explicit PV, we use the compounding factor with our sum product, and we divide in our sum product. And then for the terminal year PV, compute as normal and use half year compounded. Okay, maybe I'll fix that a little. Goodbye.